Well, the reason I brought up the public versus private distinction is there's people now in Catholic circles who are saying certain things about Pope Francis. Patrick Coffin, for example, seems to have come out and said that Pope Francis is an anti-pope, not actually the Pope, but Pope Benedict is still the rightful Pope.
Yeah.
Taylor Marshall has accused Pope Francis of heresy, and I'd like him to come out and really clarify certain things, because in one tweet he said Pope Francis is a heretic. In a following tweet he said something like a pope who is a heretic is no longer the Pope.
Yeah.
It's like a syllogism, but he doesn't give you the conclusion. He kind of leads you to draw it out. And perhaps he's said some clarifying comments. I don't watch him, so maybe there's been a comment that he's made that I'm not aware of. But when people come out and publicly call Pope Francis a heretic or an anti-pope, I think it's similar in that I don't need to privately reach out to Coffin to then address it, or Marshall. This is something that everyone, I think, it's in the public, so we can publicly respond to it. So have you looked into Coffin and Marshall's thoughts?
I have, and I've been a friend of Patrick Coffin over the years, and I thought he did a fabulous job as a Catholic apologist with Catholic Answers, and I was on with him many, many times, and I felt like he could answer all the objections to the faith better than any of his guests, including me. And so I just have a lot of respect for him and appreciate him and his family. And he actually sent me what he called an hypothesis about the Pope being an antichrist, and he asked for my opinion.
Oh, anti-Pope, not antichrist.
Excuse me.
You're fine.
That's another issue.
Yeah,
the Pope being an anti-Pope, and he said, I'd like to hear what you have to say. He said, I watched your video where I talked about the Cardinal Hollerich thing, and which is, I think I titled it, I never thought I'd see this happen. And he said, I could see your anguish, I could see your concern. This is what the problem is. So he gave me all his reasons why he thought that Pope Francis was an anti-pope.
Was he looking for guidance or
Well, I think he was trying to convert me. Which is okay. I mean, when you think that something's important that people should take a look at and believe, I respect him. I took a look at it, but I just wasn't convinced by what he was saying. I think he's kind of clutching at straws in a lot of ways. He said, like, the apostolic constitution that governs papal elections forbids kind of politicking before the conclave, and we know that the St. Gallen mafia met and they talked about it, type of thing. And what I responded to that is that, I was there at the conclave. Well, I wasn't in the conclave, but I was with a cardinal that elected John Paul II. I was in Rome a few months before Benedict resigned. I was a delegate at the Synod on New Evangelization. Cardinals get together regularly and talk about what's going on in the church, about they know there's going to be a conclave pretty soon. So I think they were starting to talk about it even back at the Synod for New Evangelization.
But is there a difference between talking amongst themselves and then trying to promote a particular guy?
But who knows what really happened? Who knows what they were doing? We don't have the evidence. Determining that they violated the apostolic constitution requires a due process, which hasn't happened. And so we don't know. And I think that it's quite unrealistic to expect cardinals not to talk about who they know, who they think would be a good candidate. And I think that's a good thing to do, and I don't think that violates the apostolic constitution. But anyway, that's I think a murky issue. But then he says there were some errors in Pope Benedict's resignation letter, and that he didn't resign from one aspect of the papacy, but he did from another, and there were some Latin mistakes. I just think that's nitpicking, and Pope Benedict himself obviously is not challenging that Pope Francis is the authentic Pope. Absolutely not. He's fully endorsing that Pope Francis is the Pope. Now, Patrick says he hasn't come right out and said that. Well, in so many ways, he relates to him as the true Pope, and he was freely elected. Even if the St. Gallen Mafia were politicking, there's cardinals all over the world that aren't beholden to a few German-speaking cardinals who are trying to push their candidate, type of thing. So I don't think that's really valid. And then he says that that Archbishop Ganswein, I don't know how you pronounce his name, Ganswein, the Pope Benedict's secretary, said some ambiguous things about Pope Benedict continuing the papal contemplative dimension of the papacy and Pope Francis doing the active one. And I think that was unfortunate. I don't think he should have said that. I don't think it's helpful. I think the argument that Benedict shouldn't still be wearing white and shouldn't be, living in the Vatican, I think there's some merit to those arguments, but I don't think anything that Patrick says in any way establishes that Francis is the anti-pope. I think he's a legitimately elected pope. I've talked to cardinals who were in the conclave who elected him, and they told me they just felt like that's where the Holy Spirit was moving them to vote.
Well, one of the things I think Patrick said was, we're fine looking back into history and saying that person was an anti-pope, so we've got precedent of this. It's just that perhaps we're a lot more reluctant to do so, and I think we should be. That's the point. We're a lot more reluctant to do so in the day and age that we do have this person on the throne of Peter.
I don't know as much about the history of anti-popes that Patrick now knows. But usually when somebody becomes an anti-pope, it's because the election is contested and a rump body of cardinals goes ahead and elects somebody else. Nothing like that has happened.
I see.
There's no competing pope. But normally when the church has had anti-popes, it's because somebody didn't like the outcome of the election. They got together a bunch of cardinals and elected somebody else. So now there's a dispute.
Do you know who Brian Holdsworth is? Have you ever seen any of his videos?
No, I haven't.
He's a Catholic friend of mine, lives up in Calgary, or Alberta anyway. I think he's one of the best lay commentators on what's going on in the church today. And he did a video responding to Coffin, though not mentioning him by name, I don't think. And he kind of offered a similar wager to Pascal's wager. He said, all right, let's say that you're right and Pope Francis is an anti-pope. Well, you're not in any position of authority to perhaps make that judgment and certainly do anything about it. So, and God's not going to hold you accountable on Judgment Day if you just accept Pope Francis as the Pope. Okay, what if you're wrong? And Patrick often is wrong. If you're wrong about this and you're saying, he's the anti-pope, think of the terrible damage you're doing to souls, I think. So, and even if that was too strong, what I just said there when I said he's wrong, I mean, that's my opinion. But I mean, just it's I think a good wager. It's like, no. If you get to heaven and you thought he was the Pope because everyone said he was the Pope, or the hierarchy assumed he was the Pope, you're not going to be judged on that. But if you're wrong and you're telling everybody that Pope Francis isn't the Pope, that doesn't put you in a good place, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, well, I think he's, like I said, clutching at straws because there's overwhelming support that Francis is the true Pope. I haven't heard any cardinal dispute it, even those who are seriously concerned about Francis's governing. You can have serious concerns about how Francis is handling things without challenging his legitimate role as Pope. I mean, we've had so many legitimate popes that have done stupid things or have been incompetent or have been foolish. I mean, Francis periodically says, I'm an imprudent person.
Please stop.
That's a very serious fault in a pope. A pope is going to cause a lot of problems if he's an imprudent person. But he just said it again recently. He's impetuous. He said. So these are serious character weaknesses in somebody who holds a position of responsibility like that. He's acknowledging them. So we can acknowledge that there's some sort of inconsistent leadership. We can say there's some, troubling appointments. There's been some questionable this and questionable that. And sometimes he seems like he's saying that nobody goes to hell. And sometimes he's seeming to say that God's mercy is so powerful that everybody's going to be saved.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought about the video.